This episode is brought to you by Gabit, the longevity ecosystem helping you live healthier and longer with smart wearables, science backed products, and expert coaching. I've been wearing the smart Gabit ring, and honestly, it has completely changed how I think about my health. It tracks all four pillars of health, including sleep, stress, fitness, and nutrition, and gives insights that actually make sense. The VO2 Max on demand, HRV, sleep stages, workout zones, stress, calories in and out, and so much more. And I love that the AI voice logging is unreal. You can literally say what you ate and it logs it instantly. It even has this AI health coach, a PEP, to help you and assist you at all times. So if you want a smarter, science backed way to optimize your health, check out Gabit.com. That's GABIT.com, and you can use my code MaryC for an additional 5% off. Now let's get back to the episode. Hi, Amy, and welcome to the Be That Life experience.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited for this conversation. I've been looking forward to it actually because I'm in the 40s club now, and I've really reached the point where every single friend of mine is literally complaining about everything you can possibly imagine.
Yep.
Sleep, stress, hormones, nutrition, weight gain, everything. And I'm also like at that stage where I'm starting to feel like, I don't know, the fluctuations in everything. And I was doing a recent research and a study on ethnicities. And you know how in different ethnicities people react to different things, right? It's the same with your gut microbiome and how it changes in every ethnicity and in every environment. And I found that actually like extremely fascinating that based on ethnicity alone, there's certain between 2 to 3 years gap in when they develop menopause. So did you know that?
Yeah, I knew it wasn't the same for everyone for sure.
Yeah, and I have a very like eclectic background, let's just say. So Eurasian, so my parents are half Asian, half European, and I think I'd love to say that I had the best of both worlds, because you can still look because Asians like just age so differently
Yeah.
than. And recently I was just in Japan. I think so. So were
I
you?
was, yeah.
Yeah, and it was my first time ever in Japan. Actually, I spent 2 weeks there, and they hate the sun. They're afraid of the sun. Everyone's in an umbrella, and like you can tell the difference with the way they live and age is very different from how Westerners and Europeans live and age, right? Because they're not afraid of the sun, while the opposite, and you can see that in how they age in their 40s and their 50s. Another thing that I discovered as well is that even though Asians don't look their age maybe till about 40s, they say that by the time they hit the 40s is when it's like a massive decline. Like they start noticing what you wouldn't notice in your 20s and 30s. So like even in my like late 30s, I was still getting ID'd when I went to places, but when I hit my 40s, it wasn't happening anymore. So it's just, you can really tell the difference. While I would say in like the European Western, like in their 30s, you can start seeing the difference because with the amount of exposure they have at sun.
Yeah.
Right. And also like, they're not using protection. They're using sun oils and they just want to be like tanned. That's the fad. That's the trend.
Right.
So, I just think like where we're at in the world today is a very exciting time. And I say this all the time because female health and female biology is truly having a moment now.
Yes.
Like everything, like from hormones to, human biology to, HRT to menopause, perimenopause, all of these things like that was never even spoken about in like my mom's generation. Like she never even knew what that was at that time. We never spoke about it. To today, like everyone is talking about it.
Yes.
And you're at the forefront of that. And I find that like super exciting and super honored to have you on my podcast today, because you obviously were in emergency medicine in the very start. So before we dive deeper into all my burning questions is I want to just understand is like, why did you move away from that? And why do you specialize in what you specialize in today?
So I was an ER doctor for 10 years. That was the first career that I had. And it was great. I loved it. High adrenaline, lots of crazy stuff coming in. Towards the end of that, I had my 3 kids within 2 years. So I had little kids at home. My husband had moved out of state for a job. So I was kind of like the lone caregiver. And I had to be at work in the morning at 4 a.m. So after a little while of that, like lots of stress, lots of poor diet, not sleeping very much, I kind of hit the end of like my rope, and I realized that if I didn't make some changes in my life, I was going to be a patient in the ER, in 10 or 15 years, coming in with some kind of chronic medical problem that probably could have been prevented if we got to it sooner. So I decided that I needed to actually learn how to be healthy. And for me, that meant leaving the emergency department and learning about health in general. So I got out in 2013, and since that time I've been in this field, kind of integrative medicine, longevity medicine, people call it now, but trying to prevent just diseases before they happen. And then I do a lot of hormones, I do a lot of sexual health, I do a lot of I treat men and women, but talk about women's health a lot specifically.
So when did the switch happen for you? So when you decided to move away from emergency medicine, was there something in your life that made you like kind of like target that's what you wanted to do?
It wasn't one thing. It was really just the combination of just feeling kind of burned out, and then looking at myself kind of from the outside and realizing that, if I wasn't sleeping more than 3 or 4 hours a night, and I was stressed out all the time, and I was drinking, Monsters and Diet Coke all day long, then I probably wasn't the best version of myself. And I could see that, like I was yelling at my kids. I was kind of unhappy, and that I needed to, kind of take control and make some different changes. So at the time, this wasn't really a field of medicine that people knew about.
Yeah.
Like all my friends thought I was crazy. They said I was just, I wasn't a real doctor anymore because I was leaving emergency medicine. I got ridiculed quite a bit, and there was no like real path forward. It was really like a lot of stumbling and trying to figure it out for a few years. But that was, 2012, 2013. But since then, luckily things have gotten a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey for you, right? And
Yeah.
you've actually transitioned a lot from just what you initially thought was your calling to now like you have a completely different purpose because you're doing even regenerative medicine. And that topic for me is super fascinating, the stem cell space, the peptide space. And I will dive a little bit more into some of those topics. But because I'm also in my 40s now, and they say that the very important milestone in a woman's life is when they hit 44 and when they hit the age of 60. And obviously, I'm starting to feel certain things about my own health, and whether ethnicity plays a role in that, lifestyle plays a role in that, or just, being in that age group. I just want to know what works for me. And for everyone else in this podcast that's listening or watching this, they want to understand their own unique biology, right? Because what works for you and me doesn't necessarily always work for other people as well, right? And so the first burning topic and question that I want to talk about is a topic on HRT. Only because there's so much conflicting information on this particular topic. And in 2002, actually, if I recall that correctly, there was an article that came out on the Women's Health Initiative. I guess you know that one, where it's like completely scared an entire generation on HRT.
Yes.
Because the data came out that it causes cancer and heart disease.
Right.
So then automatically like millions and millions of people just went off like hormone therapy. They stopped doing what they were prescribed to do, and just like had this massive scare. And I mean, I read through that phase because it even past 2022, people are still talking about it today. Women are still, doubting HRT, whether it's HRT in synthetic form, whether it's bioidentical. They're still questioning, like, is that going to cause breast cancer? What should I do? I don't want to take it. How long should I wait until I should start taking that? So, from your perspective at this day and age, and everything that you've learned about HRT, and been working with, multiple patients, when's the right time to take it? Should we be taking it? Is that scare still something that we should be thinking about? Or was that just, because it was a myth, right? They specified it like it was based on a study for over 63-year-old women that was mainly focused on like past their menopause phase.
Yeah. So a lot to unpack. I think that outside of a healthy lifestyle, that hormone replacement therapy, which is also called menopause hormone therapy now, I believe it is the best thing that women can do to stay healthy for longer and potentially even live longer. I think it's the single best thing of all the tools out there, all the hacks, all the cold plunges, all the apparatuses we can put on our bodies. None of those are nearly as effective as just getting on estrogen and testosterone, progesterone in perimenopause and menopause. So in terms of the Women's Health Initiative, yes, what we learned from that is that it wasn't actually estrogen that was the problem. It was the synthetic progestin, which is it's kind of like a version of progesterone, but it's synthetic and it looks different. And so the body actually reacts to it in a negative way. So the synthetic progestin caused increased breast cancer risk, caused increased dementia risk, increased heart disease risk. The actual estrogen, if you just use it alone, actually caused a 26% decreased breast cancer risk. And so it's funny, even doctors, don't understand this now. There's less than 5% of women worldwide are taking hormone replacement therapy. Those are who are over 50. So 95% of women who are mostly eligible for it are not taking hormones because their doctors are scared and they're scared. And 23 years after the Women's Health Initiative, people still don't have all the information.
They don't have all the information because it's not been backed by science, or what's the reason why?
Because they haven't.
5% is a really low.
It's a low number.
It's a really low number.
It's a low number when you think, and especially when you think about the fact that women who start estrogen therapy early in menopause, so within about 6 to 10 years of menopause onset, they have a 30 to 50% reduced cardiovascular disease risk. They have a 30 to 50% reduced risk of osteoporosis and a 30% decreased risk of dementia. And we even see reduced all-cause mortality rates in women who start estrogen therapy early. So this is a tool like no other tool that's out there currently for women that we have better studies behind estrogen therapy than almost anything else, but there's still that fear factor and that just people are still scared of it, no matter the fact that we have a lot of studies that say it's actually perfectly safe.
You mentioned early. Yeah. You should start early. What does that mean? What's early? When? Because you're hearing it from doctors, you start at 45. Should you start at 45? Should you start earlier? Because I know women in my circle that are experiencing joint pains, brain fog, weight gain, sleepless nights at 42.
Yeah.
So should you be starting it when you're having those symptoms already? Or should you wait for when the bracket that they give you specific for that?
So it really depends on the person. Menopause is defined as 12 months without a period, and that usually happens at around age 50, 51. There's a range there, but around age 50 is menopause. Perimenopause is the 5 to 10 years before menopause, and that can start as early as age 35 and still be considered normal. So 35 to 40 is not uncommon to start having perimenopausal symptoms. And if you think about it, it's basically the ovaries are running out of eggs. So perimenopause, you still have a few eggs, you're still occasionally ovulating, but you're getting these crazy estrogen spikes, and then progesterone is kind of marching downward. So in perimenopause, early perimenopause, we usually start with progesterone because you're usually running out of progesterone, so we supplement progesterone back. So women in their 40s are commonly on progesterone. Sometimes we'll add testosterone if needed because that's something else that's been going down since about age 25 for women. And then usually as you approach menopause, later in perimenopause, and then as you kind of start having kind of wonky periods and periods are getting skipped, then we'll add estrogen at that point and then keep you on that as well.
Okay, so if someone was going to come to you today and had all of these symptoms and they're 42, what's your usual protocol? Do you just talk them through something initially, try to understand what's going on, then you get them on some specific tests, and based on those tests, you then prescribe something? So can you just run me through a little bit about how that works, just so that the audience can have a better understanding if this is the right doctor that they should be working with, opposed to someone that they should be working with instead?
Yeah. So in perimenopause at age 42 is usually perimenopause. We'll do a whole bunch of diagnostic tests. So it's important to look at your hormones, but the hormones are really bouncing around quite a bit. So that's less important usually than it is looking at all your other metabolic health markers, because what starts happening in perimenopause is your blood sugar starts going up, your insulin resistance starts getting worse, your blood pressure starts going up, your cholesterol gets worse. So all of these things, your thyroid function gets worse. All of these happen because estrogen is starting to kind of become irregular and is going down. So those tests are really important to look for changes in metabolic health. And we also can check estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. But mostly it's symptoms, just listening to, are you having insomnia? Are you having, mood changes, anxiety, sore breasts? There's all these symptoms that happen that can be oftentimes from low progesterone in perimenopause. And we can give you progesterone either just half the month, like a cycled progesterone, if you have regular periods, or if they're irregular periods, we'll give you progesterone every day. And it can make a huge difference for sleep, for anxiety, for just kind of calming you. It's fantastic.
So I recently was at the Shah Wellness in Spain.
Ah.
And I did a bunch of, diagnostics, all those tests. It was a week of intense tests. I actually thought I was going to go there and like have a nice holiday, but it's
Yeah.
not a holiday at all. Have you been?
No, but I was going to go. I've been invited. Yes.
Yeah, and it's just like test after test after test. But at the end of that, my results came out really incredible because I was thinking that, once you hit a certain age, you get worried about certain things, right? And you're always going to question. Like I come from a family line of cancer, so my father got cancer, but both my parents, both my grandparents from both sides of my parents, mothers had breast cancer, right? So I start to think about those things in our 40s. But luckily, like all of my results came out quite optimal. So I was thinking, like, is it based a lot to do on lifestyle and the way I've been living as well that makes me feel so good in my 40s that the only thing that's probably bothering me, which it goes up and down, by the way, because there's some months that I'm sleeping incredible while there are other months where I'm just like waking up at like 3 4 a.m. every morning, and I go to bed at 8, but I'm waking up all the time. And then there are other nights where I'm just sleeping like a baby. So, for someone like myself who has zero symptoms other like the issues with sleep, or like my friend who's like 42 and has the joint aches, the brain fog, inflammation, weight gain, like why is that happening to them and not me?
Yes.
So I want to know. Like she lives a pretty healthy lifestyle. She's working out every day. She's eating really healthy. She eats organic. She's slim, but she's noticing like way harder impacts of perimenopause than I am.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, we don't always know. Certainly, a healthy lifestyle is always foundational. It's always important at any age. Like, that is always the first step. However, you can't necessarily lifestyle your way out of these hormonal fluctuations.
Yeah.
So you can be living the perfect lifestyle, perfect diet. You're doing Tai Chi every day. You're doing coffee enemas, whatever. You could be doing all the things, and still have very profound, very uncomfortable effects because of these hormonal changes. And I think that's a message that women need to hear. Like you could be doing everything right and you can still have symptoms, and it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because your ovaries are running out of eggs and your body is like, it's concerned. Like your brain is concerned. It's not getting any estrogen anymore. Your blood vessels are concerned. Like everything is starting to kind of be like, hey, we need more of these hormones. And so you start getting symptoms because of that hormonal loss. And there's no way to replace those hormones except for replacing the hormones.
Okay. Now there's also the conversation between HRT and bioidentical HRT. Can you just explain what those two are and which one do you recommend to your patients?
Yeah, so HRT, hormone replacement therapy, is kind of the older name. I still use it as well for describing replacing these hormones at menopause or perimenopause. And they used to use synthetic versions of estrogen and synthetic versions of progesterone. So it was called progestin and estrogen. That is not used as much anymore. In most places of the world, we've switched to bioidentical forms of estrogen and progesterone. I did switch many years ago, but some doctors just in the last 5 years. The difference is that the bioidentical form, the chemical structure of the hormone we're giving you matches exactly the chemical structure of what your body is or was making. So we're giving you bioidentical estradiol is the name of the estrogen, progesterone is the name of the progestin, and we give you back those things so that your body doesn't react negatively to those hormones because it's familiar with it. They're like, oh yeah, we know these guys, and it doesn't cause the same kinds of inflammation problems that those synthetic versions used to.
And how often are they doing these treatments? So how does it work?
So it depends on the hormone. Most hormones are given every day. Some of them are given
it's like
estrogen.
injection.
Usually we're doing
Patches.
Estrogen is usually through the skin, like transdermal,
okay.
or a pill every day. You can do patches twice a week. Progesterone is most commonly a pill before bed because it helps with sleep and it's very calming. It's fantastic. So
okay.
that's one thing you might think about for your sleep.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's very common in cycling women in perimenopause. The second half of your cycle, like the 2 weeks before your period, that's called the luteal phase. In that phase, progesterone is supposed to go up and be really high in that phase, but oftentimes in perimenopause it starts to not go up as high, and so that's why you start maybe seeing more PMS symptoms, heavy bleeding, pain, moodiness, anxiety, and poor sleep. And all of those things, if you give back progesterone, oftentimes those symptoms will go away. So it's super easy, super safe, and you just do it for 2 weeks a month. It makes a big difference.
And do you do it for like the rest of your life?
Ideally, yes. I mean, I would say
Okay.
we used to
So
stop
once you
hormones pretty
prescribe it,
early.
they're like for the rest of your life, pretty
And
much.
you can always stop it. It's not like it's going to be. It's not going to be if you need to stop it or have side effects or whatever. Certainly, we stop. But ideally, once you get on the hormones, you stay on them because the benefits go away when you stop them.
Yeah.
So for instance, we know estrogen is one of the best things you can do to protect your blood vessels and
Yeah.
prevent heart disease and strokes. And so we want to protect those blood vessels. Estrogen is kind of like a shield, like an invisible shield that protects your brain from dementia. It protects your bones from osteoporosis. It protects your joints from joint pain, frozen shoulders, things like that, and it protects your blood vessels. And so it works as long as you're taking it. But if you stop taking it, then obviously the shield goes away, and then you start having aging kind of come on in force.
Yeah. Does that also reflect on your skin health?
Absolutely, yes.
So what do
Estrogen is
women
so
start
good for the
looking
skin.
once they take it? Do they look younger?
Well, if you can catch it, like you want to kind of catch estrogen as it's going down. Like that's why we don't give it till like late perimenopause, because if you
Oh,
give it too early, then you just have really high estrogen, and then that makes you gain weight, have water
right.
retention. Like it's a whole balance. So it's not like you want to just start these hormones when you're 25. You really have to catch them when your own production is going down and work with your body. But yeah, estrogen is responsible for collagen formation. It signals collagen formation. And women, as they go through perimenopause, lose about 30% of their collagen
Yes.
body-wide, including skin, joints, even like their eyeballs. Like there's collagen loss everywhere. So estrogen really helps to prevent some of that.
So what's the optimal range?
Most doctors will tell you there's no optimal range. I would tell you that in menopause, the optimal range for estradiol is between about 65 and 150 or so picograms
Okay.
per ml. And symptoms play a big role too, certainly how you're feeling. When you're cycling, your progesterone, your estrogen's going up to 400 and back down to 0. So it goes up and down throughout the month. So this is why when you're cycling, it's not always as helpful to check these hormones,
Right.
because
You're always
every
checking
day
after.
they're really doing crazy things.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, so it's important to check after the cycle.
It's important just you need to have a doctor who knows when to check it in the cycle. So,
Oh,
normally it
right.
depends on what you're checking. Some hormones we check on day 2 to 5 of the cycle, some we check on day 21. You don't have to know all of that, but you just have to have a doctor who understands what the hormones are doing throughout the month, and just know that those vary quite a bit from day to day.
And would you see a GP for this, or who's the doctor that you see for this? Because honestly, it's a valid question because I
Yes.
know so many women who literally go to the wrong type of doctor and get misdiagnosed for something completely different and are taking pills. For example, I know women till today in their 40s are still on birth control pills
Yeah.
for skin health.
It's
And I'm like, why are you taking birth control pills for your skin? They're like, I need it because if I don't take it, I'm breaking out.
yeah. Women in perimenopause will go oftentimes see 4 to 5 or 6 different doctors for different medical problems because they're having symptoms of anxiety or skin changes or bladder infections
Exactly.
or palpitations or all these different things that seem like they're not connected. So they'll go see all these different doctors. They'll get prescribed antidepressants and pain
Ex-
medications and something for their heart and all these things, when it turns out a lot of these things are just perimenopause, and if you just got on the right hormones, you wouldn't need those medications. And as to what kind of doctor, the short answer is a doctor who's been trained or trained themselves. That the problem is that because of that Women's Health Initiative in 2002, we have an entire generation of doctors who were not trained in how to diagnose and treat hormonal changes in women in perimenopause and menopause. And so it's not like all gynecologists know, or all urologists or endocrinologists. Like there is not a field of medicine who has taken full ownership of this space. But you need to have a doctor who's kind of gone out and gotten their own trainings, sought training, and are knowledgeable. But unfortunately, it's hard to find those people sometimes.
Super hard.
Yeah.
And so many countries that don't have those type of doctors because they're really focused on just a conventional system.
Yeah.
And they don't want to move past that. They would just want to work in that space. And I think for women who are really wanting better answers because they're tired of feeling that the way they feel, they need to do the right research and focus on someone that really is an expert on hormone health.
Yeah.
Whenever I speak to women, I just say, please go speak to a doctor that understands that, because they're giving me so many different kind of feedback on what their doctors are telling them. One of them is the one on the birth control pills. So if you are on birth control pills in your 40s, can you also take HRT, or do you have to get off birth control pills to take HRT?
You can take testosterone still. Birth control pills will oftentimes, it will lower your free testosterone because it ends up, the pills kind of cause an increase in a protein that binds up your testosterone. So it's very common for women, even in your 20s, even in your 30s, who are taking birth control pills to have low testosterone, low free testosterone, which is the available testosterone, and they'll have low libido, it'll change a lot of different things, muscle building, motivation. And so we can give testosterone to any age woman who needs it. We don't give estrogen and progesterone if you're on birth control because you're taking synthetic versions of those hormones already, and those synthetic hormones have essentially shut down your body's ability to make those hormones, and they're so powerful that if we give you bioidentical hormones, that they won't work, they won't do anything. So we have to wait until you're off the birth control pills before we give you the bioidentical hormones.
Okay, so for example, myself, where I'm not feeling that many symptoms, right? And I'm hitting the 44 mark. And next year, I'm going to be 45. And I would have doctors that would tell me that by the time I hit 45, I must be on HRT. I must be on it. And if I decide that I'm not on it, for example, and I think I'm feeling fine, and my spirit is I still like 24, and I don't like I'm ignoring all the symptoms, and I decide that by the time I hit maybe 50, 55, I want to start taking HRT. Would that be too late?
No, it's not too late. In fact, in perimenopause, if you're not having symptoms, if you feel good, we don't necessarily need to give you hormones back. I do
Okay.
not think it's something that everyone needs to get. As you get closer to menopause, where we know that those hormones have gone down, then that is a good time for sure to consider hormones, because you want to get in, we want to get on them early in menopause, especially estrogen, so that you can prevent all of those things we talked about earlier. But in perimenopause, you could maybe not even have a lot of symptoms until right before you go into menopause, or not even have any symptoms. When you're in menopause, I do recommend hormones even if you don't have symptoms. In perimenopause, I don't.
One of the most common things that women also experience is the vaginal dryness, low libido, intimacy issues. And I don't know, like personally, I feel like I, I don't know, I don't feel as sexually like thriving. And I go through phases, Sometimes I'm just like all up for it, and there are other times where I'm just like, I don't really care to have it,
Yeah.
And also the sensitivity is not as incredible as it was in my 30s. So can you do anything about that? Is there like any kind of treatment, lasers, exosomes, anything that we can use to kind of help with that feeling that I'm having at this stage?
Yes, I mean, all of the above. So certainly hormones play a big role. Estrogen,
Yeah.
progesterone, and testosterone, all three are important in your brain
Yeah.
for desire, arousal, orgasm. So all of those are important to replace for those purposes. We also can just do like low dose vaginal estrogen, which is so important. I think every woman over the age of 50-ish should probably be taking a low dose vaginal estrogen, because it works locally, it just works in the pelvic floor, but it helps to keep the microbiome healthy so you don't get infections. It helps with lubrication, it helps with blood flow, it helps with keeping your organs inside so you don't have like bladder prolapse or incontinence. So all these things that you don't want to get later on, but also helps just with sensation and keeping all the organs like healthy as you get older, and it helps sensitivity, all of those kinds of things.
Are those like the suppositories?
They're suppositories or cream that you just apply like 3 days a week.
Which one do you recommend? Which is a better
It doesn't
option?
matter, either
They're both.
one.
They
Yeah.
have They both have the
I
same
think the
effect.
cream is probably a little easier, a little less
Yeah.
messy, but it's super important. It's very inexpensive, very safe, even for breast cancer survivors and people who aren't supposed to have like systemic estrogen, because this estrogen is just working in your pelvic floor, so it's not getting into the rest of your body. So it's something any doctor can prescribe this. They don't all want to, but they can. And you can get it from regular pharmacy.
Why don't they want to?
Because they just don't understand how important it is and how safe it is.
Right. And do you feel the results? Like, do you feel better right away, or does it take like months of you like rubbing the cream to actually
it's
feel?
usually at least a couple of months to feel full benefits.
So consistent application for a couple of months,
Yeah,
and then
consistent.
you're going to start feeling different.
I mean,
better.
if you have low estrogen symptoms, and this can
Yeah.
also be people who are, maybe you're breastfeeding for several years,
Yeah.
and that's also causing low estrogen symptoms in that area. Maybe you're overtraining, you're an athlete, and you don't have periods, you're not ovulating, and that's also caused. So you can have low estrogen symptoms, like vaginal symptoms, even if you're not in menopause. I think that's also really important to know. Like if you're not ovulating and having regular cycles, then it's possible that you have low estrogen, and that can cause these vaginal symptoms. So that's a good one. I do stem cell injections into those areas as well. I
Oh,
also use shockwave therapy, which is high intensity sound waves, which is amazing for men and women's sexual health. So I have a lot of tools kind of in the toolbox, but vaginal estrogen is the first one, and it's super easy.
okay, amazing. I'm gonna definitely try that. Is there like a particular brand that you recommend, or it doesn't matter?
It's just estradiol or
Estradiol.
estriol. Those are two bioidentical types of estrogen
Yeah.
they're both great.
You know, I always wonder when it comes to our our hormones, the way they fluctuate in terms of our mood and the anxiety. How are you dealing when it comes to like women who are like have ADHD, ADD, massive amounts of anxiety, like crazy amounts of mood swings, have no more like the sense of like emotion. Because like I know women who are like kind of like emotionless in their 40s.
Hmm.
Why does that happen, and how do you help those women?
Mood changes are pretty common
Yeah.
in perimenopause. Brain fog, which is kind of like a catch-all term, affects at least 30% of women pretty severely, and that could be anything from mood changes, depression, anxiety, as well as like attention problems, focusing problems, word finding problems. Like just think about your brain. What's happening, and we have studies on this, is your brain energy like goes down by 30% during perimenopause. So like if you think about a light bulb's at 100% your whole life, and then all of a sudden it dims by 30%, and no one tells you it's coming. No one tells you why or what's going to happen, and that dim light bulb in your brain stays like that for the rest of your life
Yeah.
if you don't replace estrogen. So that is something that we know happens in a lot of women during perimenopause. They'll quit their jobs, or they'll leave, kind of step back at the workplace. I call it the perimenopausal glass ceiling, and that's a lot of it's just you're losing estrogen, you're losing progesterone, and you're losing testosterone. Testosterone is really important for like motivation and assertiveness and quick decision making, and like CEO kind of power. A lot of that comes from testosterone, which is also going down and also really important in women. So replacing those hormones can really improve executive function. It can really improve, all the brain chemistry. The brain needs those hormones to function optimally, and those hormones go away, at around 45 or so.
Okay, now I've been seeing a lot of information online that the peptide space is just booming. I know women in their 40s that look insanely good for their 40s, and they have bodies and physiques like they're in their 20s. And they just advocate so much for peptides. And there are certain peptides that I've been like kind of researching and looking into, that are focused, like kind of mimic like a GLP-1 almost. And they help with like the fat around your midsection and metabolism. Do you promote that, and do you give that to women who are struggling with like weight loss and have weight gain?
Yeah, I mean, peptides are a very broad group. Peptides are just short proteins, just like a small number of amino acids, proteins, and they all have very specific functions. These are all things that your body makes naturally, and then we're supplementing them. And depending on the peptide and where you live in the world, some of them are hard to get, some of them are not approved, some of them are, but there are a lot of different ones out there that can be like really like they're like topical peptides, like GHK copper, for instance, is very well known in the skincare industry. It's in a lot of like topicals for skin and hair because it's so great at improving skin health, but that's something you could also use as an injectable. There are also ones that can improve your growth hormone. So for instance, as you get older, growth hormone goes down. That's something that can be really helpful for burning fat, for building muscle, for improving skin health. So there are these growth hormone secretagogues or peptide that can improve growth hormone. So there's a whole bunch of different peptides, but I will say a lot of them kind of fall in like the regulatory gray zone,
Yeah.
where they're maybe not approved, or they're told like these are not good for you, or there's not enough studies on them. So we have to be a little careful in prescribing them. But I do like them. The GLP-1s are peptides, so that's like Ozempic and Wegovy. Those are peptides, and certainly that class of peptides are phenomenal. I think they're amazing.
But they've been abused.
Sometimes, I
and
mean, certainly
overused.
they can be abused. I think you have to be careful with any drug. You have to always be monitoring for making sure you're not losing muscle, making sure you're not losing weight too fast. But those medications do have a lot of benefits that are outside, I believe, outside of just the weight loss benefits. We've used them in people who don't necessarily need to lose a lot of weight, but they have a lot of inflammation, pain, arthritis, autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
So those peptides are, we're just starting to learn about all the things they could do.
Are you prescribing peptides a lot, or do you kind of focus on other things and then peptides is just like a secondary modality that you use? Or, you know, I asked this because are there certain peptides that you would recommend for someone that wants to lose weight, like the name of that peptide, and also someone that really wants to have better hair health? Because I know so many women who's just like have terrible hair health in their 40s.
Yeah.
And also, like, I live in Dubai, and the water quality in Dubai without a filter is horrible. And, if you're not really being careful and, consistent and diligent about that, you will just be like balding I mean, women are losing a lot of hair in their mid 30s because of that reason of the air, of the water quality.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly use peptides. I think that I think the hormones and lifestyle are kind of the first foundation for me. And then peptides are kind of the next layer up. And the GLP-1s, like you talked about, are really the go-to peptides for weight loss because you're losing both visceral fat, which is that deep fat that's inflammatory, but then they also cause that weight loss of subcutaneous fat. But so semaglutide, tirzepatide, there's a new one, retatrutide, that'll be FDA approved here pretty soon, that are all fantastic. And we use those quite a bit. And then oftentimes we'll also use other peptides in combination with those. But really, like, you don't want to start with peptides. You want to start with your lifestyle and then build up if you need hormones. And then I think peptides and kind of regenerative therapies are on top of that.
I love this idea of scheduled intimacy. It's a lot of conversation around that now, especially with my girlfriends who've been married for a really long time. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I mean, I think people throw shade at like scheduling intimacy, but like if it's not happening because it's not on your schedule and you're super busy or you feel like you're super busy, then get it on your schedule.
Right? Right? Because I think it's important. And so, what are your thoughts on women who just don't want to get sexually intimate anymore? Do you believe that it's important? This is an indicator of a lifespan?
I think it's important. Certainly not everyone is going to want it, and that's okay too. We can't tell you exactly what you should and shouldn't do, but there is a very strong correlation between a healthy sex life and longevity. We have multiple studies on this, and especially interestingly enough, for women, it's not so much like the quantity of sex you're having, it's the quality. So the quality of sex, whether you enjoy it, whether it's pleasurable, is more highly correlated to a healthy lifespan and healthy longevity than the quantity. So it is very common. 30% of women during perimenopause will just lose interest in sex and kind of stop having sex. Most of them don't get back to it even after their hormones kind of settle down.
Very true.
Some of them do, but it's very common because again, your brain is losing all these signals: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and there's a lot of other things happening. Usually, like you've been with your partner for 20 years at this point. Maybe you're bored. Like there's your kids are growing up, your parents are getting old. Like there's a lot of stress that comes into it as well. So I think it's multiple different things that kind of happen at one time. But I think that if it's been important to you in the past and you're noticing changes in your desire and your interest in sex, then it's worth looking into why is this happening and can I change it?
So to all the women out there who just refuse to have sex with their man, take this as a sign that you need to have a little bit of it at least, for the sake of longevity, right? Because I mean, we're so focused on that, hyper focused on longevity now. It's not just a trend anymore. People want to live past 100 and they want to live healthy. And we're doing everything we possibly can so that we can get to that place where we're thriving in our 90s and 100s. Like you have people like Brian Johnson who wants to live past 100. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you think, in the space of regenerative medicine and longevity, is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible to live past 100 for sure. I don't think that we're in the place quite yet where people are going to be living to 120, 140, 50. right now. So certainly there are a number of things on the horizon, probably in the next 5 or 10 years, that look promising. The gene editing and cellular reprogramming, and a lot of like big therapy kind of things, like big science that's coming, that's working in animal models. That if it works in humans, then it could really delay our death. But right now, we still have to kind of lean into the lifestyle, the hormones, like the things that we know work.
There's a lot of conversation as well that's been happening towards the angle of the fascia. And that's also something that hasn't been spoken about a lot over the years. And recently, it's like had this comeback. I recently started doing these Russian practice that's been banned for like over decades. And they've recently brought it back, it's called the Pravelo. I don't know if you've heard of it,
No.
where it's the most powerful stretch ever that you can do to your body, and you're tied to a machine.
Oh.
So kind of like, I mean, a lot of women who see my content on social media and see that I do that, they're like, it kind of like gives you like the 50 Shades of Grey vibes.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking in the back of my head, this sounds like 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, and but honestly, I for the first time when I first time I ever tried that, I went in there with a lot of anxiety, like pent up emotions and feelings of maybe things like I wanted to release. I go into that experience with an open mind and an open heart, and I come out of that feeling like I've never felt before. Because the thing is, what it does is that it pulls your entire body. It stretches your fascia, which means it opens up all of the blood vessels, the lymph system, and it gives you just the way better flow that your body needs, that you wouldn't be able to normally do on yourself, that even a physio cannot do that just with their normal machines. And I bring this up because women are talking about, like, is there an opportunity where in that circle of people who are focused on the fascia release that you won't get menopause at all?
No.
You
would still get menopause. Right now, because we don't have a way currently to delay or prevent the ovaries from running out of eggs. So, you run out, eggs are being released every month, obviously, with ovulation. But what you may not know is that throughout the month, dozens of other eggs or even hundreds of other eggs start to mature and then they die. And so you have a lot of these sort of eggs that are just being thrown away, if you will. And right now, we don't have a way to stop that from happening. There's a lot of research into it, but until we can get women to the point where they're not getting, like, their eggs are not kind of going away at midlife, there's no way to prevent menopause from happening.
Yeah, that was also a very interesting topic, because I was having those discussions with people and say, based on fascial maneuvers, you can actually like completely eradicate getting menopause at all. And I was like, that's a pretty interesting topic, because he's discovered it in his own modalities with his own people, that they just, because there is this whole debate and controversy around what were women like back in the day. Were they developing menopause?
Yes.
Have always developed
Always.
Menopause?
Yes. Humans and like orcas are some of the only mammal species that have menopause, which is essentially running out of eggs, and they stop making these vital hormones, midway through our lives. Like, we're still, but in the old days, most women did not live to be 70, 80 years
It's
old.
true.
Like, they would die
50, 60s.
at 50 or 60. And so it wasn't a big deal to stop making these vital hormones. Now, there's a lot of things that go into ovarian aging. Like, we definitely know there are some things you can do. Like, if you can avoid endocrine disrupting chemicals, then you may be able to delay menopause by a couple of years. So there are some things that, and certainly healthy lifestyle can help delay menopause by a couple of years. And the fascia release maybe does that. But it is not stopping your eggs from going away. Like, so far, I've not seen, and if he's stopping it, then he should publish a study, because I've not seen anything so far that can stop those eggs from drying up and kind of becoming, without their actual egg. And with the egg gone, you can't make the estrogen and progesterone that you need.
Because for decades, society has really programmed into our brain that once you hit that phase in life, you're like worthless, useless. And automatically women started thinking that they are. They started feeling that they are. And this conversation is really important today because we want to showcase that women actually are reinventing themselves at that age. It's a completely different decade and era of your life where sure, you lose so many different aspects of your hormone health, but now we have all of these bioidentical hormones and things that can help you get better, but also like we're thriving in such a different way, so it's actually meant to be celebrated and not feared. And I just think like we should be less focused on what society has programmed us into thinking all these years and be more focused on, hey, how do I feel at this decade of my life? What can I do to be better? We can never have a conversation in anything health related without the topic on nutrition, because that's really, really important too,
Yes.
right? So women that hit the phase where they are in the perimenopause phase, mid 30s to that decade, to then from 45 to 55, what is your recommended nutrition that they need to be focusing on? I know, we talk about protein all the time and the importance of protein.
Yeah.
We have doctors like Dr. Stacy Sims who really focus, like you can't do the intermittent fasting, but that isn't so really focused so much on the women aspect of it, that you need to have a meal first thing in the morning. What are your thoughts on that, and what are your protocols for women that are going through this phase?
I like to keep it pretty simple. I think protein and fiber, prioritizing those two things, and healthy fats. And certainly the fibers, a lot of it should be coming from fruits and vegetables. So getting a lot of plant-based fruits and vegetables, I think it's important. And then the protein piece is important. Other than that, I think that there are many different diets that will work. But if you get your 100 or so grams of protein, your 30 grams of fiber, and some good healthy fats every day, then you're probably hitting most of the things you need to get.
And how about natural supplements? What do you usually prescribe when it comes to that?
I have a supplement company. I know you do as well. And mine, I created something that was just for women, especially in like longevity. But the main things that women generally need, usually vitamin D, unless you live somewhere where you're out in the sun quite a bit. Vitamin D, magnesium, B vitamins are some things that are commonly low in women as they get older. And then there's all kinds of other things that can go down as well. Like, mitochondrial health can go down. So things that can improve mitochondrial health, like CoQ10 and things like that. So, there's a whole bunch of different kind of ingredients out there. I think it depends on the person, but I do think that it's, I like supplements. I don't think that everyone needs to take all the supplements. Like, I don't think you need like 40 bottles of supplements, but I do think that, some omega-3s thrown in there, maybe some creatine, some of these things can be really beneficial.
So do you believe more in a plant-based diet?
No, but I think that plants in the diet are important. I eat meat. I think that there's a good quality protein comes from meat, but and I think that but you can get protein from plants, and you can do, certainly you can have a healthy diet whether you're plant-based or not totally plant-based, but just eating some plants.
Do you believe in intermittent fasting?
I think it could be a tool. I think it's most helpful if in women who are eating too many calories. I don't think that the fasting itself has probably as many benefits as we thought it did. I do think that it can be a way to control calorie intake, and that reducing your calories ultimately is going to help with weight loss. And so if you have someone who's eating too many calories and they're overweight or wanting to lose weight, then just condensing that the eating window, like a time restricted feeding, intermittent fasting, can be helpful. I don't do it myself, because I don't need to worry about weight gain, and I do need to worry about muscle loss. So I don't want to stop eating. I want to make sure I'm eating most of the time.
And what are you recommending in terms of fitness? So is it just the weight training that's really important? What are you recommending?
Yeah, I think weight training at least 3 days a week, 3 to 4 days a week for women. That's number one, is lifting heavy weights. And then I think number two is getting in some of the sprint intervals or the high intensity intervals, at least 2 or 3 days a week, even if it's just for 10, 15 minutes. And I think certainly the zone 2, the walking, all that is important, but I don't think it's probably as important as the weight training for women.
And do you feel like when women hit their 50s and haven't taken the HRT and don't prefer to take it ever, what would happen to them?
Well, certainly not everyone's going to choose to take hormones. I think it's your prerogative. And I think that the main thing I want for women to have is the discussion. I want them all to have the information and the option to make their own decision. So to me, it's not about forcing someone to take hormones or not. It's giving them the choice. And in order to have a choice, you have to be informed of the risks and benefits of both taking them and not taking them. So I think that one of the conversations that women often don't have with their doctors is they have the discussion of what are the risks of hormones, but they don't have the discussion of what are the risks of not taking hormones, which is that you're going to, start accumulating heart disease. You're going to get plaque in your blood vessels, like all the things that we know happen as soon as you lose estrogen will happen to you. And certainly a healthy lifestyle is going to help prevent those things. And maybe that's enough. But just understanding the risks and benefits, I think, is really important. So you can make your own choice.
The fact that you state that it will happen is also something that women need to take into consideration, right? Because studies have backed that up. They've done the tests, they've checked, they've understood that within that age bracket, and if you're not doing the things you're supposed to be doing when it comes to HRT, you will start developing all of those problems. But it's important for women to know that and to begin options. Also, women are not every single woman in the world are based in the US, living in the US. A lot of them are living in the Middle East, are not from the Middle East. A lot of people are living in Europe, doesn't understand, which doctor to do it with. Who do we trust when it comes to the kind of HRT that we're taking? Because I get this asked all the time, by the way, in Dubai where I live. And the women are just not confident enough to take it from that place. They prefer to travel somewhere else and take it. Now, is there a recommendation from your end as to where is the safest place that you can actually take bioidentical HRT?
No, I mean, it really comes down to having a doctor that understands how to prescribe it, and then just making sure that it's bioidentical or body identical, we also call it. And that the estradiol is the estrogen, progesterone is the progestogen, and making sure that those two words are the words that you're looking at. There are all kinds of other hormones out there that have similar names that are the synthetic versions of the hormones that are not ideal for most people.
I find this conversation like the most interesting. Thank you so much. You've given me so many insights that I can use in my own life, but also every single woman that's going to be watching it will have just a little bit more confidence in the type of doctor they're going to be choosing, the kind of HRT that they're going to be, putting into their body, the supplements, the nutrition. And also, every single woman at this stage of life, that one thing that they hate the most is the weight gain part. I went through a phase at the beginning of the year that I was gaining weight and I couldn't remove that weight, especially on my midsection. And I'm not someone that gains a lot of weight. I'm quite petite already, but obviously with the age and with this symptoms and the face, I started gaining. And yes, I did struggle because I was also starting to get like really lazy. I was losing this motivation for life. But then I came to a point where I was just like, I pushed myself. It's about finding a way to build that consistency up for yourself again, because no one's going to push you better than you push yourself.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to end this podcast on that note and say, like, sure, we're all different, very unique in our biology, very unique in our stages of our hormone health, when we develop perimenopause, when we develop menopause. But then again, it's the same, like I say to everybody, always listen to your gut. Your gut instincts knows, and stop ignoring the symptoms. Always listen to them. If you're having night sweats and joint aches and sleepless nights, don't ignore them. Do something about them. Have the conversations, and trust that if you do the right research and you are able to find someone who really specializes on hormonal health, you can be able to trust that the bioidentical hormones that they give you will be the right one for you. Is there anything else that you would like to add on that point, specific for women at this stage of your life?
No, I think the main message is that you have a lot of power. Like, you as women are able. We have so much information. We have, we are able to learn about these things in a way that we've never had before. I think this is the best time in the history of man to be a woman. Like, I think this time right now is better than it's ever been. And certainly there are obstacles, but we have at our fingertips more information than we've ever had. Hopefully soon we'll have more access to doctors and be able to get some of these things. But just take the reins in your own health and try to make some of those decisions. Don't just float on the river. Like, take control of the river.